Howdy, 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 everybody, and welcome to a fantasy rebooking of WCW 2000, of course, inspired by the excellent guest booker series of videos from KFAB Commentaries. If you've never watched any of those videos and you're interested in the booking side, the back, the creative side, I guess you could say, of pro wrestling, the guys that, worked during their careers in pro wrestling, they worked as the matchmakers and bookers and whatnot. If you're interested in that sort of stuff, I highly suggest the series. The particular video I'm referring to here was with Jerry Jarrett, known from Memphis Wrestling, was one of the well-known bookers of his generation. Not always the most popular with other promoters, but still well known and made a lot of money, did a lot of cool stuff in his time. And as is often the case, you'll watch a video like that and you want to learn what they would do, how they see things, and you learn from them, but as a fan, you also have your own ideas and see things your own way. So, while I don't necessarily think that his way of trying to save WCW in 2000 was necessarily bad, I still feel that he was kind of living in the past in a lot of ways, trying to hang the belt on Hogan again, amongst other things, when it was guys like Hogan that ran the company into the ground in the first damn place. Between Hogan, Nash, and Vince Russo, WCW by the year 2000 was fucked. We had already had the finger poke of doom. Goldberg had been exposed several times at this point, that he could not actually have a match with anyone. Vince Russo coming in trying to hotshot everything to death and only really succeeding in putting it to death, almost. He had been fired at this point the first time. So, but in early 2000, because we're going to more or less look at this from the beginning of 2000 through, actually I've got a couple of years worth of stuff planned here, because at this point WCW was just in the gutter. It needed to be rehabilitated. Now, there's a few things that Jerry Jarrett talked about that I am wholeheartedly in agreement with, because it's simply true. It would have been impossible to bring WCW back from the brink of death without serious overhauls on the management side, on the actual business side of things. So, for this entire exercise, this fantasy rebooking to work, it has to be done under the assumption that there would be a meeting with the Time Warner people. I don't think AOL took it over until months later. So for this, the purpose of this this fantasy rebooking scenario, we're going to say that Time Warner is still in charge, or if AOL has already bought them, then they aren't as sour on pro wrestling as they were. But whoever is in charge of the company at this point, they're sick of losing money, because it's come out since then that WCW really only made money for that business, for Time Warner, for like 1 year. They lost money every single other year. It was the height of the popularity in like 97, and maybe they made some money in 98. But for the most part, WCW did nothing but hemorrhage money for Time Warner, and they're sick of it. They're not prepared to completely abandon it because it has made money. And when it was actually making some money, it brought in some decent revenue. So they're curious to see if this thing can be salvaged, if it can be brought back. And they're willing to give up more power, and they're willing to go in different directions. They want to see what can be done with it. So our assumption for this fantasy rebooking is that they you know, whoever I'm representing as far as Booker goes, myself, or a fantasy version of myself that would have been around at that time. Well, I was at 18 in 2000. So it's not like I wasn't alive or anything at the time. Like I said, I was 18. But, you know, that doesn't really matter. For the purpose of this, we're gonna say that they are giving me complete control. And the discussion has been had that this is necessary. They've got to give me the freedom to keep guys that I want to work with, get rid of the ones that I don't want to work with that I think are a problem. In order to start making money and stop losing so much money, we've got to completely overhaul everything on the business side. The contracts are all going to have to be redone. So basically, the one thing Jerry Jarrett did, well, it's not just one thing. I mean, like I said, I don't completely disagree with his ideas. But right at the beginning, I completely agreed with what he did in the video. Again, you should watch the video for yourself, but the first thing he does is fires everybody, essentially, and then says, you know, if you want to stay around, sign a new contract. You're going to make less money up front, but hopefully, I can say that over time, I wholeheartedly believe we can make this thing big again, and within a couple of years, you'll be back to making what you were, if not more. And there are guys here that can be making a lot more money than they were. And if that sounds good to you, come see me after you've thought things over. But there are definitely some guys I'm not keeping around. I'm not keeping Hogan, I'm not keeping Nash, I'm not keeping Goldberg. Because Hogan, whatever you want to say about him, at that point, he was suffering from several injuries, his star power was seriously diminished, and he was, if he would have been willing to work as a manager, if I could have seen him working as a manager, then maybe, but I don't think he ever would have done it. He was too much of a spotlight whore and a diva to ever take the role of a manager. He would always be trying to steal the spotlight from whoever he was managing. It just wouldn't work. Nash, without having his buddies around, without Hogan to hang his star on, Nash just was not good. He was an okay talker, he was a shitty in-ring worker, and the NWO did not work because of anything he did. And again, at that point, he's suffering from lots of injuries, so maybe working as a manager, same scenario though. If he would be willing to work as a manager, I can see it, having him hang around, but he wouldn't have done it. As for Goldberg, the kind of revamp that I would want to do, he would not fit in because he could not work in the ring. He still can't work in the ring. Even after all these years, he still cannot work an actual match to save his life. So, overall, what I'm going to be doing is I still have a substantial list of names here. You're going to notice a lot of these are low and mid-card guys. I do have some of the classic WCW guys because that's who we really need. The other reason I don't really want to keep around Nash and Hogan is because the entire point of the NWO was that it was supposed to be the WWF invading WCW. Once it got off those rails and it started recruiting loads and loads of people, and it became, at times it seemed like there was more people in NWO than there were in WCW. There was in WCW. And it just completely went off the rails. It got bloated and ridiculous, and every match was a gang beatdown. Every match was a cheap finish. Cheap finish. It was ridiculous. It got pathetic, and the height of that was the finger poke of doom, which was just a smack in the face of all the fans. Okay, so the whole thing is, even though that took place like a year before in early 99, I think, or late 98 and into early 99, it still hurt the business. It cost them a lot of fans. it hurt a lot of people's feelings. There's a reason why it has the reputation it does, even if they want to try and play it off and don't want to admit the impact that it actually had. The entire thing of taking Goldberg, whether he could work a match or not, he was working, he was making money for them. To take that and trash the streak and trash Goldberg, destroy all that was taking place just for their own ego, just because they could. For that alone, I would not want Hogan and Nash around. But Goldberg's ability, any benefit he had in early 2000 is gone. So here are some of the guys I'm going to keep around. I'm going to keep around 3 count. This is early days for Shane Helms, and the other 2 guys were okay, but Shane Helms, we all know that he went on to do some really great stuff later. This is early days for him, but doing fantasy rebooking years and years later, we have the benefit of hindsight, which they didn't have at the time. So we know that Shane Helms is capable of doing some really cool stuff, some really good stuff. And the other 2 guys, I think, probably had it in them too. We're going to keep Bam Bam Bigelow. We're going to keep Billy Kidman with Tori. We're going to keep most of the managers because managers are useful. We're going to keep Booker T, Bret Hart, Chris Kanyon, Palumbo, DDP, Disco, Fit Finlay, Shane Douglas, Jeff Jarrett, Jindrak and O'Hare, the Young Dragons. I don't really remember them, but the Cruiserweight Tag Team, I believe, so we can get some use out of them. We're going to keep Conan, Chronic, Brian something, I can't remember his full name, Lance Storm, Chavo Guerrero, Mike Awesome, Sean Stasiak, Ray Mysterio, Ric Flair, Rick Steiner, Scott Steiner, Sting, Roddy Piper. Chris Candido didn't come until March, but we're going to have him. Terry Funk Vampiro Hoovy, we're going to bring back in because he didn't leave until a bit later in the year. Steven Regal we're going to keep because he didn't leave until like February. So since we're starting in January, we're going to keep some of the guys that left towards the beginning of the year. Okay, so that's the guys I'm keeping. So from the old roster. Now, before we go into the full roster and everything else I want to do, my overall goal here is to rehab the company. And I want to do that through really highly competitive matches, lots of competition, put the focus back on the belts, of which there are 6, but I'm not going to actually get rid of any of them. The championships, I should say, there's 7 belts, including the tag titles, but 6 titles. So, like I said, my goal here is to rehab the company, and we're going to do that through high competition. We're going to take things back to basics a little bit. There will still be room in here for some interesting storylines, angles, and whatnot. And hopefully I'm going to be able to get some guys to help me fill in the blanks, to help me work on the under and mid-card stuff as needed. So I'm going to, hopefully I can get like Kevin Sullivan to come back. Hope maybe Jim Cornette, because he was well gone from WWF at that time. He was working in OVW, I believe, in 2000. But perhaps we could still get him on board to work in the booking, the creative, for this new WCW, because I think his heart was always with the Southern wrestling, the WCW sort of stuff, and we're going to try to take it back a little bit to tradition, to classic pro wrestling, what WCW used to be known for. We're still going to be able to have some of the newer stuff, some newer style of angles, some hardcore wrestling, the high-flying cruiserweights and stuff, but we still want to do it with that traditional touch of making it based around competition. The idea of people competing, hoping, or trying to get a belt, a championship. And then you can have the other feuds and angles and stuff as color. So, to complete my roster, I'm going to start looking at the indies. Because there were indies in 2000, and some of these names you may know, some of them you may not. Some of the guys, there's a couple here that used to work at WCW at various times, like Psychosis. He was gone, but I would bring him back. Yeah, working on the indies, maybe early days for some of these guys. Amazing Red, AJ Styles, Low Key, and Brian Kendrick, aka Spanky. And then we've got Super Dragon and Excalibur, Halloween and Damien. Halloween worked in WCW as Cyclope, I believe, was what it said. Sabu was out on the indies, so I'm going to try and grab him up. And some of these guys, even on the main roster, some of these guys are going to be on part-time contracts, because you don't need this many people full-time. So we're going to let them, we're going to have them part-time contracts and let them work in the indies, or if they want to. Well, they'll have to, probably. We're also going to look at CZW, which was early days, and XPW early days, for some of the hardcore stuff, because I didn't really keep a lot of guys that I would want to have in a hardcore division, a thriving hardcore division. So I'm looking at names like the Messiah, Homeless Jimmy, Sick Nick Mondo, and of course Sabu's in there. Basically, we can just, you know, bring in guys for short runs and one-shots and whatnot to work with our mainstay guys that we're going to keep on the roster full-time. But, you know, CZW and XPW was doing a lot of the really crazy hardcore stuff. We're not going to go that extreme by any measure. You know, I don't think even with Full Control that Time Warner, TBS, whatever, TNT would actually allow light bulbs matches. I don't know, they might, if they were desperate enough, they really wanted it to work enough. But the point is that we're going to bring in some outside talent. We're also going to try and rekindle the partnership with New Japan, NJPW. So at that time, we've got guys like Nakanishi and Yuji Nagata, Jushin Thunder Liger, Tenzan, Masahiro Chono, Kojima, a young Tanahashi, young Shibata. We've got Makabe in there. These are guys that I'm familiar with. Plus, there is a good roster in New Japan, so we can do some cross-talent, you know, promotion, you know, talent exchange sort of stuff. You know, we get Masahiro Chono for 3 months, they get Bret Hart or something. Maybe try to build up a partnership with AAA or CMLL in Mexico. And ECW was still going, they were actually doing pretty well in 2000, so try to partner with ECW. Now, in hindsight, we all know now that Paul Heyman was already partnered up with Vince McMahon on the sly, but that doesn't mean we couldn't potentially get something going with them with ECW or WCW too. But we're not going to make any assumptions there. This is just possibilities. I'm not really going to do a lot or any booking for these guys at all. The New Japan, any partnership stuff, because this is just like talent exchanges, one-shots, short runs, bringing some new faces in, sending out old faces for a while, sending out some of the younger guys for a while to get seasoned up. Just trying to kind of rebuild the NWA, in a way. Which WCW is kind of the successor to the NWA, so that's what I would be trying to rebuild there. And you know, you'd still be able to get some really cool short runs from, you know, some of these guys, and you know, matches that may have never happened that people would have liked to have seen from some of the New Japan guys, and you know, Ric Flair and Bret Hart and Roddy Piper, Terry Funk, you know, because you know, they were getting older at that point. Terry Funk was not in the greatest shape, but you know, they could all still go. Bret Hart was pretty much in his prime at the time. So there's a lot of good talent here, and you know, pretty much everybody on here, you could have something going on with them, plans for them. But you know, I didn't go that in depth. I just wanted to stick to the bigger picture. That's why I would hopefully have guys like Kevin Sullivan and Jim Cornette that I could call on to fill in the low and mid card stuff, and keep everybody, you know, that everybody that's full time, keep them working, and then make sure all the short, the part-timers and one-shot and short-run guys, everybody has something to do week to week to week, because we're keeping both TV shows. And we're going to do some stuff with the TV title to make it more relevant and make it more interesting. It's going to be defended in the main event every Monday. Every Nitro, the TV title will be defended. That's going to be its gimmick. Because I'm a firm believer that having multiple titles isn't a problem. It's having multiple titles and nothing to separate them from each other. Nothing to make them relevant, nothing to make them feel important. The TV title being defended every single week on TV in the main event of the show means that anybody holding the TV title gets lots of exposure. It means that they're going to have to work hard, but they're going to get a lot of exposure, and it's going to really mean something. So the TV title, just from doing that, is going to gain a lot more meaning. The hardcore title has a built-in gimmick, an identity. The cruiserweight title also does. So does the tag titles. That just leaves us with the world title and the US title. Now, I'm not going to get rid of the US title. I'm just going to keep it as a secondary singles title, but we're going to do some stuff to really increase the importance of that title. Now, I also wanted to mention that Ready to Rumble is going to be released in April of 2000, which means the movie's already been made. We can't stop the movie from coming out. But we're not going to do a whole lot of stuff. We're going to advertise the movie. We're going to advertise it as a fun buddy comedy involving pro wrestling. We're not going to do tie-ins. We'll have David Arquette, and we'll have actors come in from the movie and talk about the movie and just do some basic promotional stuff. We're not going to go full tilt retard like Vince Russo did with that. So let's get on to my plans for the first year. And again, this is going to be broad strokes. So, this might seem a little weird. First thing off the bat, in January, I'm putting my title, the heavyweight title, I'm putting on Steven Regal. Better known possibly as William Regal, but he worked as Steven Regal in WCW. Now, that might seem weird to you, because he never had a world title, to the best of my knowledge, in either of the big companies. But I have a very specific reason for a very good reason for wanting to put the title on him. First off, he is an excellent heel. He gets under people's skin. They don't like him. He was already working really well as a heel at this time. He's got lots of little things he does, little nuances to how he works in the ring, all sorts of stuff that he does that just makes him on another level from a lot of guys. And I want a really good heel as my world champ to start with. Why? Because I also agree with Gary Jarrett in the video. He talks about how pro wrestling, if you really want people invested, you have to get the emotion in there. It's a lot harder to build up a great face, a great good guy, than a heel, a bad guy. A good heel can get under people's skin like that. With a click of the fingers. There's just things about the body language and the look on the face and the actions and the promos. They can just get under people's skin. I need a good heel. No, bar that, I need a great heel. And Regal is a great heel. And he can work. And plus, it's not just that he can work, he comes from that British style, very rough, knock them up, beat the crap out of each other kind of a style. That's what I want to start kind of building the company on, high levels of competition. So, Regal gives me that combination of somebody who can work. He can work the mat, he can work the brawling style, he can get a little hardcore if he needs to, and he is an excellent heel. Great heel. So he gives me everything I need going forward. He can cut a great promo. He's got the whole package of what I need moving forward. sure, you know, and there's other names on here that Flair fits the same role, but everybody knows Flair. He's, you know, putting the title right on Flair again would just feel to the fans like same old hat. I don't want same old, same old. I need something to freshen things up. Okay, same with Bret Hart. Bret Hart had been there for like 3 goddamn years, but they never did anything with him. 3 years, roughly. But they never really did anything with him. He wasn't really established as a heel or a face. And Bret Hart never had a great promo either. I need somebody who can talk. I need somebody who can get asses in seats. Okay? Looking on here, DDP would be same old, same old. Shane Douglas, great heel. He's a second guy that I might have hung the belt on or put the belt on. But he wasn't at his best at this time. So I would need to rebuild him to show how great of a heel he could actually be, and let him be Shane Douglas. You know, Jeff Jarrett can be a great heel, but at this point we're still wandering into same old, same old. Conan, he can be a good heel, but he wasn't built up enough. It wouldn't have felt right. Lance Storm, if you give him, you know, when he was doing If I Can Be Serious for a moment, but he's not my heavyweight champion. Not yet. Maybe down the line, but not yet. Mike Awesome cannot cut a promo, and I have other plans for him. Scott Steiner would same old, same old. And plus I have plans for him. Roddy Piper, I think people like Roddy too much to work him as a heel these days, you know, even then. Terry Funk can work really well as a heel, but he needs the right opponent and he needs the right setup. Didn't have that. Vampiro can be a great heel, didn't have anything to set up behind him. Okay, so I look at my roster that I've got, the guys that were there, and even guys that I can get off the indies that to come in. Steven Regal has the total package I need to get this thing going. So he is going to be my first heavyweight champ, and I'm sure I would have people wondering what the hell I was thinking doing this, but like I said, I just explained to you why. I need a great heel that can piss off the fans in the right way to rile them up, get asses in seats, get people watching the TV show, get under the fan's skin, and work as a heel and work in the ring so I can get that competition going. So I'm going to keep the belt on him for a full 6 months at least. You know, I just kind of roughed out the time periods here. And during that time, I want him having great matches, hard-hitting technical matches with Finlay, the Steiner brothers, Vampiro, Sabu, Flair, Bret Hart, Shane Douglas, Terry Funk, and Piper. Get the, you know, brawling in matches, getting the technical stuff in matches, and he's going to go over all the way through for several months. Until we're going to have Scott Steiner finally take the title off of him around the summer, sometime during the summer. Because Scott Steiner was hot at the time, he was working great as a heel. I think he could have worked just as well as a face. So I'm going to be having Scott Steiner work with Rick. I'm putting the Steiner brothers back together, and Scott's going to be working as a face. You know, the kind of the cool rebel kind of thing that he was doing, but toned down more and pushed more in the neighborhood of face. Probably once the belt's on him, I'm going to push him back towards heel. Because again, I need guys that can give me time. You know, I need heels that can keep the fans engaged while I'm rebuilding some of these other people, building up some new faces, re-establishing some of the old faces, you know, the good guy side of things. And all the while, over the entire period of the year, we're going to be working Booker T and DDP in different feuds. I want Booker T and Sting feuding over the U.S. title, so that's going to come up again when I get to the U.S. title. And Once Candido comes in, we've got the triple threat from ECW. We're going to freeform that. They actually did that. It just didn't do it. They didn't do anything with it. So we're going to team up DDP with 3 Count and create kind of an interesting dynamic there, because DDP could still go in the ring, but he was also used to working as a manager, and he was a great talker. That's what 3 Count needed. 3 Count did not have a mouthpiece. Shane Helms hadn't really gotten his voice yet, so we're going to team up DDP with 3 Count, so you have triple threat and 3 Count. Natural animosity there in some ways, because of the similarities of the names, and they're going to feud with each other for quite some time. At least until the audience is tired of it. Or, you know, is still hot for it, but not getting tired of it quite yet. Okay? So after Scott Steiner gets the belt, at some point, because I'm going to have the tag belts on the Steiners for quite some time, DDP is going to have a tag team match with one of the members of 3 Count against the Steiners, and that's going to net DDP a title shot. Something's going to happen during that match that's going to get a title shot. So we're going to have DDP feuding with Scott, because at this point Scott's going to kind of turn heel, and DDP is going to be working face, because he always worked best as a face. He was just too damn likable. After he took off, earlier in his career he was a heel, and he did okay, but once he turned face, it never really felt right to boo him. But during this feud, Scott Steiner's going to retain the title, and he's going to keep it most of the way through the rest of the year till like around November or December, when Booker T will take the title. Another face. During this time, Booker T had already had some success as a face. He was in a singles wrestler. But we're going to spend that whole year building Booker T up as this monster face. We need just this real likable, energetic, great face. Which is what we really need. He could cut a promo, he had the energy, he could work a match, he's everything I need for a really good face, that at this time was somebody fresh, or fresher. Because keep in mind, this is 2000, he hadn't really done a lot. Early 2000. He had not done all that much as a singles wrestler yet. So, we know what he was capable of. Again, that benefit of hindsight. We know Booker T is capable of being a really good face or heel, but at this point I want him as a face. And he's going to take the belt in late 2000, November and December. So we've had heels, Regal, and then Scott Steiner is a heel, turning heel when he gets shortly after getting the belt. Maybe kind of a build-up of having the heavyweight title going to his head, and he kind of goes back to his old persona with that ego boost in there. And of course, we're not going to just discard Regal. We're going to keep him in the mix doing other stuff. And that's why you have Kevin Sullivan and Cornette, those kinds of guys around to make sure that after Regal loses, he doesn't just kind of disappear and fade into the background. Like I said, this is just broad strokes. Everybody's going to have something to do, hopefully. So let's get to the U.S. title. Now, the U.S. title meant nothing at this point, really. It has a great history. In fact, it's still around. They've renamed it the WWE U.S. title, but it's still the same title lineage, actually. So it's been around since the 70s. So that's one reason I don't want to get rid of the U.S. title, because it has this great lineage. But at this point, with WCW, none of the titles really meant anything. U.S. title, none of them really meant anything, to be honest. So we need to rehab all the titles. By having Regal, again, in these really hard-hitting, really technical, competitive matches, and holding the heavyweight title for 6 months, and people really acting like they want this title, no more soap, or very little soap opera drama. The focus goes back to the titles, as I said. We're rehabbing the heavyweight title through the entire year, keeping competition high, keeping the emotions high, the desire for the belt high, making sure people talk about wanting the belt, even people who aren't even in the title scene at the moment. Whatever belt that we currently want them in the title, in that scene, we want them talking about the belts. We want them talking about how much they want those belts. And that's across the board. All the way down to the TV title. You know, if you want to look at the TV title as a lesser title, even. But the entire point here is that we give each title its own identity and its own importance, so none of them feel like they're lesser. Even though the heavyweight title is kind of the de facto king of the titles. But, you know, that's a matter of perception. So the US title, I want this belt on somebody that's established, so I'm putting it on Sting. As I said, Sting and Booker T are going to feud over this for a few months at the start of the year. Because even though putting it on Sting, you might say old school, or old, you know, same old. We have Sting, former heavyweight champ, getting the US title and treating it like it's not a demotion. You know, that's the death knell. We need him to defend this title in not hardcore, but high competition matches. That's important for all the title matches, all the matches across the board. If it doesn't feel like they care, then the fans don't care. So I'm putting the belt on Sting, and he is going to feud with Booker T for a few months. He's going to feud with Lance Storm for a few months. He's going to feud with Terry Funk for a bit, Flair for a bit, Sabu for a couple of months, Jeff Jarrett to end out the year. I'm keeping the belt on Sting the entire year. High competition, real close call matches sometimes for Sting, but he's going to retain the belt all year. And we're going to rehab the value, the perception of the US title by making it mean something. And we're going to do the same thing with the hardcore title. We're going to put it on Mike Awesome, because we know he can work hardcore, and he can work lots of styles with lots of different people. We're taking the goofy gimmicks off of him. We're letting him be Mike Awesome again. He'll need a mouthpiece, so I'm thinking somebody like Jimmy Hart. So, you know, there were several really good managers still around. Jimmy Hart was one of them. I'd probably put Jimmy Hart with Mike Awesome, somebody like that, you know, can do the job that I need him to do, because Mike Awesome could not really cut a promo very well, so he needs a mouthpiece. And he's going to retain all year through months of hellacious hardcore matches. Again, same principle as with Sting. He's going to feud with people, he's going to have some really crazy-ass one-off matches with some of the outside talent guys. We might bring in some of the light bulbs and barbed wire, whatever we can get away with, and save that for, like, you know, that's going to be on pay-per-view, obviously. Whatever we can get away with, we'll go there, as long as everybody involved is willing to do it and okay with it, and feels they can do it safely. Okay? Because, again, the hardcore title, the entire point is that we need to rehab every title, make them all mean something. So Mike Awesome holding that title for a whole year, at least, through all these crazy-ass matches. We're going to build Mike Awesome up. We're going to make him look like $1 million. And, you know, and in doing so, we also make the hardcore title really mean something. Cruiserweight title. Might seem a little old hat, but we're putting the title on Rey Mysterio at the start of the year. And I'm going to keep that belt on him for like 3 or 4 months, maybe 5 months. Fierce competition. Weekly competition. You know, the TV belt's going to be defended every Monday night. We might have the Cruiserweight defended a couple of times a month, plus pay-per-views. A couple times a month on TV, plus pay-per-views. But we're going to reduce, you know, they had way too many belt or championship matches on TV. We want to save those for pay-per-view for the most part, except for the TV title, of course, which will only be defended on TV. But we still want to have some championship matches. So on Thursday, the Thursday show, occasionally that will be main evented by another championship match. Usually it'll be the Cruiserweight title. Cruiserweight or the U.S. title. Very occasionally, like Hardcore or Tag Belt, or Tag title defense. Never heavyweight title. Well, maybe like once every 6 months, give them a heavyweight title match. Maybe a little bit more often than that early on, because I did have quite a few names here I wanted to feud with Regal in only 6 months. That would only be 6 pay-per-views. So if I could only choose 6 guys here, you know, I definitely fit Finlay to feud with for a while, because those two, you know, those two could beat the crap out of each other and make it look great. Scott Steiner would be the last feud where Regal would lose. You know, Flair, Bret Hart, Terry Funk, Piper, Douglas, you know, all these guys. So maybe some of this stuff would take place on TV. Some of these matches, you know, some of these wouldn't necessarily be full-blown feuds, but there would be some back and forth and tag matches and stuff going on up there. So let's get to the back to the Cruiserweight. So we're going to put the belt on Ray for a few months. Really fierce competition. We're going to build up Shane Helms, because, like I said, we know that he's capable of a lot. He's going to get the belt in around May and hold it till around October, when we're going to put the belt on Low Key, who we've been building up this, you know, the entire time as well. And we're going to keep it on Low Key through the end of the year. A very simple progression, but the entire thing here is that we've got a lot of great names over here for Cruiserweights. You know, we've got, let's see, we've got, I think the Young Dragons were Cruiserweights, so they could be in the mix. We've got Chavo Guerrero. We all know how good he can be. Rey Mysterio, of course. We've got Juventud. We know how good he is. We're bringing in Amazing Red, Super Dragon, Excalibur, Psychosis, AJ Styles, Low Key, Brian Kendrick, Halloween and Damien. You know, all of these guys are great cruiserweights in their own right, and some of them are really great tag teams, you know. Halloween and Damien and Super Dragon and Excalibur, if you've never seen those guys in a match, I saw them on a couple of XPW, old XPW tapes I have. At least one of them, and I think I've seen them in a couple of other matches, you know, against each other too. They are just excellent cruiserweight tag teams. These are the kinds of teams that if I need a match to kick off a TV show or a pay-per-view and just burn the house down, a real barn burner to fire the crowd up, these are guys I know I can count on to do it. You know, you can always rely on the cruiserweights for a lot of excitement and energy to really get the crowd fired up. But we've got a great assortment. We've got a great cruiserweight division with a lot of these names, with all these names really. So we can have lots of great competitive matches over the course of the year between, you know, Ray for a few months, then Shane Helms for a few months, and Low Key for a few months, actually holding the title. With all that competition, and they're always talking about wanting the belt, where I'm going to win the belt, I'm going to get that belt, I'm going to work my way up and get that belt. Everybody. We're going to rehab the Cruiserweight title, we're going to make it mean something, and it's going to mean great, high-flying, hard-hitting, high-impact, high-spot action. From some of the best athletes in the company. Next, we have the tag belts. As I said, we're putting them on the Steiner brothers at the start of the year. And basically, I'm going to keep the belts on them all year. Things will become strained with Rick and Scott after Scott starts moving more towards heel. I'm not sure about breaking them up, though. Rick might go heel, too. It just depends on necessity. But basically, I'm putting the belts on them first thing in January. They're going to feud with all the teams through the year. You know, all the established teams, put together new teams as needed. And I want to end out the year with them feuding with Triple Threat. Candido and Bam Bam as a tag team, and they're going to take the belts around November and December. Because we're going to build Candido and Bam Bam as just being this really amazing tag team, with Shane Douglas working as singles and as their mouthpiece for the three, and really let Shane Douglas be Shane Douglas and be a great heel, to build these guys up as a great heel team. So, you know, we figure Scott's probably going to start turning heel almost immediately, but we want to not pull the trigger right away, so it'll probably be around the time of November, you know, October, November, somewhere in there would be when he's really pushing the heel stuff. So right around that time is when I'm going to want tension to be the highest between the Steiner brothers and them to possibly break up again. Not sure about that, but they're going to drop the belts to Candido and Bam Bam as part of the Triple Threat. Alrighty. So, the TV title, which is all about lots of competition on TV, it's going to be high status, or high exposure. We're going to start by putting the belt on Chris Kanyon. I want to build him up a little bit. He never got a fair, you know, a real good chance, I don't think. So we're going to keep the belt on him for a couple of months. Then we're going to put it on, like, Fit Finlay, Chavo Guerrero for a little while. Then, towards the end, you know, for the last 3 or so months of the year, I want it on Ric Flair. You're probably thinking, Ric Flair with a TV belt? That's crazy. No, I need to rebuild, you know, the TV title needs to mean something. Every title on the card needs to really mean something. I've been saying this over and over again, but this is something I want to push. By having Ric Flair win the title, even for a few months, and make it feel important, act like it's important, put the emphasis on, I'm the TV champion, you're going to see me out here every Monday night defending this title, and because it means something to me, it means something to the company, I am your champion, I am your TV champion. That is going to put so much behind the TV title. It will mean so much more. You know, you have all the guys saying that, and every one of them adds more meaning to that title, but you, in the end, you get Ric Flair putting his credibility behind that belt. Suddenly, you know, it means so much more that way. And you have him hold it till the end of the year, maybe a little bit into 2001. And I'll talk about that up next. Because I did do all the way through, you know, kind of what my plan would be going into 2001 as well. So, for 2001, for the heavyweight title, we've got the belt on Booker T to start with. And I'm going to keep the belt on Booker T all year. I think he can do a solid year run as champ, as a face champ, and have some, you know, and actually flip things over. Instead of having faces chasing heels, now I've established Booker T as a great face. I'm going to start building up some monsters to go after for him to slay, basically. You know, highly competitive stuff. I'm not talking about squash matches. I don't see the point of squashing, having guys get squashed just to try and make it out like somebody's this fucking monster, when all that does is make them look like a joke. And if they got, you know, it doesn't mean anything if somebody gets beat real easy. It's like, well, nothing was earned. So, to start with, we've been rebuilding Regal. He's going to get a feud and a title shot in early 2001. At some point, we're going to turn DDP heel. We've been building 3 Count as this great face team. We're going to flip DDP heel and turn on them, and he's going to get a title shot in the mid-2001. Well, the springtime, basically. Okay, again, we've been allowing Shane Douglas to build himself up as this heel and be Shane Douglas, the Shane Douglas that those of us who know him from ECW know and appreciate him as a heel. He's going to be getting built up all the way through 2000 and through the first half of 2001. So he's going to get the summer feud and the summer title shot, and then we're going to be building up Conan as a heel for a shot in late 2001. I wanted some different faces in there. There are other guys I could go with, and if I was doing this for real, situations would dictate who was available, and if the audiences weren't responding to certain individuals, I'd have to change the plans, obviously. But we're just doing this on paper, as you have to. So I know Conan can work as a great heel, and even though he had been there for ages, he never really got out of the mid-card. He never really did much of anything outside of the mid-card, even though he's a great talker. And in terms of his influence in Mexico and his popularity in Mexico, there's a reason he's called the Mexican Hulk Hogan, because he was incredibly popular in Mexico. So having Conan in a high-profile, in various high-profile feuds, all leading up to a title shot and a feud and a title shot in late 2000 to finish out 2001, would bring a lot of credibility from international audiences. Maybe you get Masahiro Chono in there for a short run in a feud for a couple of months or something. Mix that in, or somebody else from New Japan. Start getting some international credibility back into the WCW product. Okay. For the U.S. title, we've had Sting holding the title for an entire year. We're going to go ahead and keep it on him for a little bit longer, a couple more months. And during this time, during the last year, during 2000, we've been building up Lance Storm. And we're also going to pair him up with Bret Hart and some of the other Canadians, and we're going to probably couldn't call it the Hart Foundation. WWF Vince McMahon probably owns that. But they did kind of something like that with Lance Storm, but it was like a watered down version with Bret Hart there and without Goldberg there to injure him later on in 2000, I think it was, when he got injured. Got kicked in the head and ended his career. Just off the top of my head here, I know Roddy Piper is from Canada and always, I'm pretty sure, was good friends with the Hart family. So just those 3 alone, Lance Storm, Bret Hart, and Roddy Piper acting as a third member and manager. Oh, come on, could you imagine that? You have the technical capabilities of Lance Storm and Bret Hart, and then the mouth of Roddy Piper, all on one team. Ooh, that would be an amazing heel. I said I don't know about Piper as a heel because he's just so damn likable. But you start doing the Canadian superiority stuff, and Lance Storm with his "If I Can Be Serious for a Moment." And Bret Hart, because Bret Hart, when he starts turning on that ego thing, he can really get under people's skin. He was really good at it. Not a great promo guy, but he knew how to do what he needed to do. And then you have Piper in there acting as a heel mouthpiece when he gets, when he's at his best as a heel manager or heel promo, he can fire the crowd up and get under their skin. So I'm going to be building these guys up and maybe 1 or 2 other members as just this super heel team. And we're going to have them feuding with like Chavo Guerrero, Ric Flair, Vampiro, everybody. Anybody that Vampiro actually was very popular in CMLL, actually. So we've got Conan, who was very popular in AAA. That's where he did a lot, was most popular. Vampiro was incredibly popular in CMLL in Mexico. So you could have them feuding with Conan as well. Again, and some of the Japanese guys, and start bringing in that international credibility again. So we're going to be building up Lance Storm because, again, I could go with Bret Hart, but I want Bret Hart to remain more of a sideline guy. Why? Because he might be potentially in his prime, but he's still kind of old, you know, same old, same old. I want him to lend his star power to some of the younger guys. We're still going to be putting belts on him eventually. It's not like he's never going to get a belt again. I need to build up some new faces, some new talent, I need to get some guys over. So, we're going to have Sting, who has held this belt for over a year, and he's going to lose to Lance Storm, who like I said, we've been building up this Canadian team as just these monster heels. You know, again, competitive, when I say monster heels, just really getting loads of heat with the fans, is what I'm talking about. So we've built Storm and Piper and Bret Hart as just these heat magnets, hopefully. And Lance Storm is going to get the belt, and you know, all the guys that all the faces they've been feuding with, they're going to come after Lance Storm, and he's going to feud with Sting, and again, Chavo Guerrero, who, you know, we know he's capable of a lot of stuff. He just didn't get a chance in WCW, and Flair, Vampiro, as I said, you know, there's any of the names over here. Terry Funk, Billy Kidman's more of a cruiserweight guy. I forgot him when I was talking about the cruiserweights. He's good, but he was never one of the greats. But, you know, we can have him feuding with, you know, let's see. Actually, we're kind of thin on faces here, but Conan, before he gets or moves into the heavyweight scene, we can try and build up Chronic as a face, maybe. You know, there's all these younger guys that weren't really fully formed yet that you can do stuff with. Rey Mysterio could try to work in the U.S. title scene for a while. Rick Steiner, Terry Funk, I believe I already said. Some of the other cruiserweight guys that were real popular, like Hoovy. Hoovy's better as a heel, though. Sabu could work U.S. title as a face for a while. You know, so there's any number of people that you know that we could put Lance Storm up against, you know, and bring in some of the, like Rob Van Dam and some of the guys from ECW, potentially, hopefully, and have him feud with them too. Some of the old feuds, revive them for WCW. So basically, I'm switching some things around here. For the heavyweight title, through 2000, we had it on heels with faces chasing it. And in 2001, it's going to be the other way around. The U.S. title, we had it on Sting as a face and heels chasing it. So we're flipping that around. We're putting it on these, hopefully we've built up, you know, the Canadians as these huge heat magnets, and we're going to send the faces to go after them. And that's going to last the rest of the year. Or as long as the fans are into it, you know. Like I said, this is on paper. You have to listen to the crowd. Hardcore title, Awesome is going to retain all year. We're going to keep that hardcore title on Mike Awesome. Again, unless the audience, it starts to feel like the audience is not into it anymore. But hopefully by this time, we've built up Mike Awesome as just this unbeatable hardcore monster. This machine. Face, hopefully. We want the audience to like him. You know? And he's big and strong, but if you put him in these situations where it feels like he could lose at any time, that's kind of my mentality, is this big, strong guy, but you make him very likable, very, what is the word I'm trying to say? I think of here. Personable. That's kind of the same thing. But just a hard worker. He always goes out and gives it his all. And every time you think that he's just about been beat, he manages to get, kind of the whole Hulk Hogan thing, but without some actual competition and selling involved. So you don't make the other guy look like a dumbass, which is what Hogan always did to everyone. So kind of the Hogan thing with the making the comeback and everything and winning in the end, but without making the other guy look like a dick. And being a dick. So some actual selling and psychology and competition, competitive matches involved with Mike Awesome. And you just build him up as just this great face, hopefully. That, has managed to hold this title for so long, even though a lot of the time it seems like he wins it by the skin of his teeth. Okay. And then Cruiserweight belt, we're going to continue kind of with the theme of, a Cruiserweight champ will hold it for between 2 to 4 months, roughly. Because we want Cruiserweight title to feel very energetic and competitive, and kind of put forth the idea the athleticism and the competitiveness of it is so extreme that holding the title for more than a couple of months is a real achievement, because the competition is so fierce. So we'll have Low Ki drop it to Kendrick Spanky around March, because we will have been building Kendrick up for several months. Probably would send him away to Japan, Mexico, to really let him get seasoned earlier in 2000, but then bring him back and build him up. And hopefully, because we know Brian Kendrick Spanky would, early days for him, obviously, but he was going to go on to do some incredible stuff. And hopefully we would have already been starting to see some of that in 2001. So I'm thinking maybe break the pattern and actually put the belt on him in March and keep it on him the rest of the year. Maybe take it off of him and have him trade back and forth during a feud. Maybe have a really, really, really hot feud with somebody like Psychosis. Or, let's see. Amazing Red would be a good one. But we would need somebody in here. We would need some heels. That was the problem with the Cruiserweight division. They never really had heels and faces that were, properly established. So, I mean, if you have Halloween and Damien working their really scary stuff that they like to do, Damien 666, he worked as well, and build them as these really creepy, scary heels. Psychosis and Hoovy could both work heel pretty good. Low Ki can work as a kind of a vicious, I'm gonna beat the crap out of you and don't care about anybody kind of a heel. But it's real easy for him to start turning face just because people want to see him kick the shit out of people. So Low Ki would probably have to stick as a face. Chavo, we know he can work heel or face, so Chavo I'd probably turn heel at some point. And maybe he would be the great big feud for Kendrick. Rey Mysterio, I don't know if Rey Mysterio did a heel turn right, it could feel like an incredible betrayal of the fans, because he is so incredibly likable. So a Rey Mysterio heel turn could actually be huge and almost be the equivalent of, it actually would be on par with Hogan turning heel, honestly. Just not as, it would take a few more years for it to reach that level of impact. So if we did it in 2001, a Rey Mysterio heel turn in 2001, it wouldn't mean that much. But I mean, it would still mean a lot because Rey's always worked face. As far as I know, I don't know that I've ever seen Rey Mysterio working as a heel, so that could be interesting. So let's get on to the tag team division. So basically, I want Candido and Bam Bam feuding with the Steiners. I guess I wouldn't break the Steiners up because here I've got it that I would have them feuding with Candido and Bam Bam all year, off and on. Also with 3 Count, I'm going to keep that feud going. Super Dragon and Excalibur, Halloween and Damien, Jindrak O'Hare. And then, about halfway through the year, you know, we're going to keep those feuds alive all through the year, over the belts or not, because we're going to really try to establish that these people don't like each other. In the summertime, I want Piper and Hart to capture the tag belts, or some other team combination. Although I think Piper and Hart would actually be a pretty interesting tag team. I don't know that I'd want it to be Lance Storm and Bret Hart. I don't know, because I don't want to put 2 belts on the same person. Sometimes that can be useful. I don't know if I'd want to do it here. The idea would be that this stable of Canadian guys has captured yet another championship. And they're going to keep the belts through the rest of the year, feuding with anyone and everyone. All the faces. Everyone. Because again, the idea is that we've been building these guys up as huge heat magnets. So now we've got our US title and tag titles for a solid 6 months, you know, from summertime all the way through the rest of the year till 2002. We're going to keep these 2 championships on what is hopefully going to be some of our hottest heels in the company at the time. Alright, and then for the TV title, right around the end of 2000 or start of 2001, Flair is going to drop the belt to AJ Styles. I haven't talked about AJ, but he is in there. Now he's going to move up from the Cruiserweight division, because I think at that time he was smaller, he was working Cruiserweight, he hadn't bulked up as much. Because this is only a couple of years into his career, really, a couple, 3 years. But we're going to have been building up AJ Styles for a full year. All of 2000, we're building up AJ Styles. Maybe sending him off to get more seasoned in Japan and Mexico, whatnot, same as Kendrick. But we're going to be doing our damnedest to build this kid up. Benefit of hindsight, we all know AJ Styles has become one of the best in-ring workers in the business. Not the greatest promo, but in the ring he is excellent. But this is early days, so obviously he's not going to have reached those heights yet, but we know he's capable of it. Benefit of hindsight. I want to put the belt on Styles, like I said, into 2000, early 2001, somewhere in there. Take it off of Flair. So we've been doing all this work to build up the TV title to really, really mean something. We're actually gonna borrow, as a, you know, with a bunny ears there from ECW and Rob Van Dam, and I'm going to keep that belt on AJ Styles for like 2 years. He's gonna, you know, hopefully he won't get injured, but I want to keep that belt on him for a couple of damn years, just like I've been doing with the hardcore title. Sometimes really high competition and taking the belt off of you know, and trading the belt around and creating that sense that people are losing the belt because the competition is just so incredibly fierce. That's a good thing, but sometimes keeping the belt on people for a long period of time adds a lot of meaning to it. So, what things that are considered like the lowest secondary titles, hardcore and TV, I want to build up the importance of these titles, again, by Mike Awesome basically holding the hardcore title for a couple of years. And then some of the names that are going to hold the TV title in 2000, like Ric Flair, and just add more and more importance to the TV title that way. But then in 2001, we're putting the title on Styles, and he's going to retain for a couple of years, hopefully, and face off against everybody. Because, I mean, it's a weekly, he's going to have to face people on a weekly basis, really high competition, very competitive matches, sometimes scraping through by the skin of his teeth, sometimes not having a hard time beating people, never squashing, but, you know, really good matches on TV every Monday night. And we're going to build up AJ, we're going to build up the TV title, it's going to... and hopefully by this point, you know, the company through 2000 will hopefully become profitable. When the buyout from AOL happens, they're going to see the benefit of having wrestling on the TV, on the network, and they're not going to want to get rid of it. We're going to have rebuilt the company, reestablished the titles. We're going to start rebuilding some of the old ties to promotions in other countries and even around the U.S. to kind of rebuild the NWA. You know, we're going to be bringing in, or keeping an eye out for the best indie talent to bring in for short runs or hire as needed. Getting those guys some good paydays and some exposure. We're going to have variety. And lots of competition. We're going to go back to, like I said, the heart of pro wrestling is in the idea that it's a competition over championships. We're going to go back to basics. And then, you know, you can still layer on feuds and angles and some of the soap opera stuff. You can still layer that stuff in, but it should not be center stage. And unfortunately, with Vince Russo in control, that's what they started doing. And even before that, really. But we're going to try and take things back to basics. And put the center of attention, the focus back on the competition and the wanting to win the belts. And that's what I would have done, or what I would have tried to do. So, thanks for listening. Let me know what you think. If you think I did anything that was really silly or whatever, just be prepared to defend what you're saying. You know, if you just say you're stupid or something, then don't expect a reply. Or if I do reply, I'm not going to be I'm not going to be nice to you. So, I mean, if you think I'm very wrong about something, then actually put up an argument, please. But I've tried to explain my decisions and why I would do things as best as I can. So yeah, that's that. Thanks for listening once again, and we'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.